Good morning, VGC. Pastor Darryl here, excited to be with you, excited to be here to sharing God's word. And as we normally do, I want to take this opportunity for us to give our roll call. So no matter where you're at here in the valley, go over in your chat area and just let us know where you're coming from. You can just type that in. I'm Darryl Morrison. I'm coming to you from Mesa over by the Orange Grove. Well, I'm excited to continue in our new series as we study the book of Ruth and as we dissect what I believe are some very, very important principles that come down to commitment. And so this series is called our commitment series. And last week I just kind of gave you an overview. And so if I can, I want us to open up in prayer. First and foremost, I'll give you a quick recap and we're going to dive right in. Father, we thank you so much for this time that we have together. We pray that you would be with us. Lord, we are asking that our hearts would be open to receive your word. And I pray that your word will begin to take root in our heart and that it would bear fruit, good fruit, much fruit, and fruit that remains. We ask that you would speak and we will listen and respond. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Well, last week we really focused on an overview of Ruth, and we focused really on verse 1. And there what we learned as we go into this series called Commitment, we learned that there were a few key figures in this story. We talked about Elimelech and Naomi. They were both from Bethlehem of Judah. Each of them played a significant role in our story, at least at the beginning. Naomi obviously being the wife of Elimelech, who would leave his own home country during a time in which the judges ruled. And we talked about the lay of the land and how the people chose to do what they wanted to do in their own eyes. They did what was right in their own eyes, which caused them to experience oppression and trouble. And so we believe, and we'll talk about this, I'll just give a quick plug for this, is we're going to begin to do a Bible study as well to coincide with this series. And we believe, and we'll talk about this more in the Bible study, that when Elimelech left, he didn't leave in obedience, he actually left in disobedience. Sometimes you have to stay in the moments of drought and weariness and obey God rather than to go to a place that he has not called you to for a place of comfort and what you believe will be sustenance. And so here we see that these were two major figures. We also know that Bethlehem, Judah was the promised land. It was the land of Canaan. It was God's chosen place. It was called the house of bread. So although there might have been a season of drought, God's provision was going to come back and be poured out upon the people. And it only meant that they had to wait instead of leave. And although their leaving was only supposed to be temporary, it ended up being that Elimelech would die there. Naomi would be left and found herself all alone with her two sons. They would marry Moabite women, the land in which they had gone to, a foreign land, a land that was actually at war with God's people, the children of Israel. And because of their leaving and what they thought was going to be dwelling and just staying there for a moment, they ended up becoming resident aliens because they stayed there. And obviously her two sons, Mahlon and also Chilion, would die there as well, even though they had taken Moabite wives. So there are some other key figures as we continue to go in this story. And number one is Ruth, and so we'll talk about her. Her name means neighbor, friend, or female companion. There's Orpah. Ruth was one of Naomi's daughter-in-laws, and Orpah was the other daughter-in-law. And Orpah's name means to be alone, bereaved, one who is unprotected, and one who has need or needy. And then we're going to talk about this as we go through this series. And I believe that God is going to unfold to us even a greater definition of what commitment is. But as we begin jumping into this, what we can start with as our initial definition, and as we allow God to even illuminate even more, we'll start here. Commitment is a pledge of devotion to stay/remain and not leave. And when we stay and we remain, it's not just that you remain for a certain time, but it means that we stay and we remain forever. So let's dive into God's word. We're going to look in Ruth chapter 1, verses 7 through 14. And then we're also going to look at verses 15 through 18. Ruth chapter 1, verses 7 through 18. Okay? Therefore, she went out from the place where she was, and her two daughter-in-laws with her. And they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. And Naomi said to the two daughter-in-laws, "Go and return to your mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find favor and that each in your house will find a husband. So Naomi kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and they wept. And they said to her, surely we will return with you to your people. Verse 11. But Naomi said, turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? And there still are there still sons in my womb that they may be able to provide you husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, if I should have a husband tonight and should also bear a son, would you wait for them till they were grown? Would you restrain yourselves from having husbands? No, my daughters, for it grieves me very much for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. They lifted up their voices and they wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. God bless us as we study your word. I'm going to go back up and I'm just going to add this verse because I believe this will give us a little bit more context. Then she arose with her daughter-in-laws that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had visited his people by giving them bread. So when we talk about this story, we understood that just by giving you context and review from last week, we understood that there was a difficult time that was going on. It was going on in Israel, and so Elimelech, Naomi's husband, would choose to leave his own country and to go to Moab. He left. He ended up dying there. And then not only would he die, his sons would take wives of the Moabites, and they would marry them, and then 10 years later, the sons would die. So now we see that Naomi is left alone, all by herself, and she's with her two daughter-in-laws. She's with her two daughter-in-laws, and then she hears word that back home, God has visited them and that he has blessed them. And now, remember, he has visited the house of bread, and now he is beginning to rain down again his provision. Okay? Remember that, because when we go through our Bible study, I want you to see this correlation. So then they get up and she decides it's time for me to go. And here we begin to see the unveiling of what I believe is a beautiful picture of what commitment looks like. And so this beautiful picture will really take place in these verses, but then it's going to come all together in verses 15 through 18. So I want to talk about the levels of commitment, Number one is commitment is based on obligation. Commitment is based on obligation. Verse 7, therefore she went out from the place where she was, and her two daughter-in-laws with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. Why do I say that this is an obligation? When you look at this, it says that she went out from the place in which she was. The place in which she was Moab. Her two daughter-in-laws were Moabites. And then it says, and her daughter-in-laws with her. It did not say that her daughter-in-laws wanted to go with her. It did not say that her daughter-in-laws needed to go with her. It just said that her daughter-in-laws went with her. When you look at that, it says, and then they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. When you look at this, what it helps me understand is that number one is that there was a great relationship that Naomi had established with her two daughter-in-laws. And when this came about, because a lot of times commitment comes when there's transition. Hear me on that. A lot of times you know true commitment when there's transition. If you read this text, you'll notice many times how it said they went on their way. They had to turn back. They had to go this way. See, they had found themselves in a place, but then God began to move them. And when God began to move them, now when you begin to see people move, then that will let you know how committed you are. When you begin to see things change, then that will let you know how committed you really are. And so transition had begun to take place. And now if you notice, it says that they went with her. Why did they go with her? If you think about it, they had great relationship, and I believe relationship is very good. But I think they felt like they had to go. She had lost everything. Naomi had lost everything. She had lost her husband. She had lost her 2 sons. And during this time, I guarantee you, she was such a wonderful mother-in-law. And I feel in my spirit that these two felt compelled that they could not let her go alone. They had to go with her. And a lot of times we make decisions and we make commitments out of obligation. And none of these commitments that I'm talking about today are bad commitments, but you want to make sure that you understand where you're at in each phase of these commitments. When she decided to leave, it says that her daughter-in-laws were with her. They were with her. It didn't say that they wanted to go with her. It says that they were with her. It does not say that they simply wanted to just be right with her. If you simply look at it, to me, it helps me understand that they had a sense of obligation, that commitment sometimes it reveals where we are in the situations where things begin to change. When she went out from the place in which she were, the Moabite women chose to go with her. Now, why did they choose to go? I believe they chose to go because of obligation. Obligation is something that I've heard my kids say when they were young. Sometimes when you're committed by obligation. I would listen to my kids say certain things, and they would see their friends doing certain things, and their friends could do certain things that they couldn't do. But it didn't mean that they didn't want to do it. But they didn't do it because they knew they couldn't do it. And sometimes that's what obligation is. Obligation is not that you don't want to. Obligation sometimes actually means that I want to, but I know that I can't. And sometimes there's commitment in which you have to say, here's what commitment says. Commitment based on obligation says I have to. It doesn't mean I want to. It doesn't mean that I like to. It doesn't mean that I ask to. It means that I have to. And some of us, we must understand that there's not all the time. Obligation and commitment is not bad. We must grab hold of that and recognize that God puts us in situations to show will we do what we have to do instead of us doing only what we want to do. Everybody say commitment. See, commitment, this level of commitment is a commitment that all of us must have, but sometimes this level of commitment is one in which you don't want to have because there are things that God wants you to do. There are things that God has called you to do, and we should not have the attitude of saying, I have to. Now let's go a little bit further. Because commitment is also based upon emotions. Everybody say emotions. Now, if you look at verse 8 through 10, it says, and Naomi said to her 2 daughter-in-laws, go, return each to her mother's house. And the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and also with me. You've dealt kindly with my son-in-laws, my sons, and you've dealt kindly with me. So I am actually giving you the opportunity to leave, and I want to bless you in your leaving. The Lord grant you that you may find rest. That word rest means that you may find rest back at home. Each in the house of their husband. So she's saying when you go back home, I believe you're going to find a husband. You just go. Let God bless you. Let God restore you. Let God do these things. So she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and they wept. And they said to her, surely we will return with you to your people. Surely we will return with you to your people. So now we see another form. They are still going with her to Bethlehem in Judah. They are still on their way. They are actually having this conversation as they are beginning the journey. But some of our commitments are also based upon emotion. Everybody say emotion. If you look very clearly, some of these emotions we must understand before we step into it. See, Naomi was willing to and wanted to return to her house. This was not their house. But if you notice, there are some pros and there are some pros and some benefits to commitment. And this is what I believe they were thinking about. What are the benefits? What are the benefits of me being committed? And so Naomi helps them understand that the benefits are very clear. There are pros and there are benefits to commitment. She says this, may God deal with you kindly. May you find rest, which means may you find a home. May you find rest in your home, and may you remarry. See, Naomi wanted to send them away, and she wanted to bless them. But there were some emotions involved in this. It says, so she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices, and they wept. We'll talk about kissing in a moment, because that is very important in this story. So she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices, and they wept. And after they wept, here's what they said. Surely we will return with you to your people. I believe that this form of commitment was based upon emotions. In the heat of the moment, emotions and feelings got caught up in the moment. And then in that moment, they decided to make a commitment based upon the way that they felt. And once again, that's not always bad, but we also must understand that we have to be careful, because a lot of commitments that we make based upon our emotions, they ignore the facts. And sometimes when we make commitments based upon our emotions, they don't allow us to consider our current situation. They only act based upon the way that we feel. Commitments that are based upon our emotions are difficult to uphold. Commitments must be based on more than just what we feel. Why? It's because you've heard this story before, buyer's remorse. You know that you've gone to that car lot, or some of us have gone to that car lot, and we see that car and we know what's in our budget and we know what we can afford and we know what type of vehicle that we want. But then all of a sudden, wouldn't they show you the nicest car over here, and it's only going to cost you a little bit more, and it's not going to be that much, and before you know it, you are so enthralled in your emotions and your feelings and your desires to where you choose to commit to something that you are not capable of really being able to cover. And so you drive around in this car for a couple of days. Sounds like I heard this story before. I know it personally. You drive around in this car for a couple of days, and it feels good. You let the music pump up, and people are looking, and it feels good that you are riding in this new car. And then it only takes for a couple of months to come around, and you have to start paying for the car that you had great feelings for. And now, as you have to pay for, and you have to sacrifice, and you have to commit to, and you have to devote to not just the car that you like, but the commitment that you made, now it begins to shift. And see, there are times when we make commitments, and it is not just about buyer's remorse, but it's commitment remorse, because we make commitments based on emotions instead of commitments based upon true facts. And God wants to help us in this season of helping us understand that there are times when, yes, your emotions will be involved in the decision, but those emotions will not determine the decision. Yes, your emotions were involved in maybe stepping into that business opportunity, but that's not the thing that will sustain it. We must have God's understanding and God's wisdom when we make decisions, because we do not want to have commitment remorse. Commitment based on emotion says, I feel like. I feel like. How many times have we done something that we regret because in the moment it felt right? See, commitment based upon emotion says it feels right. Number 3, there's commitment based on decision. And this is where I believe now we dive into this and we begin to see the beautiful picture of what commitment really is. I already said it. When you make commitments based upon obligation, there's nothing wrong with it. When you make commitments based upon emotions, be careful in that. But one of the things that you want to make sure that you do when it's all said and done, you make your commitment based upon a decision. Listen to what she says. She tried to tell him, you need to go. You can go back. You can go to your home. You're going to find rest there. I pray that God will deal with you kindly. I pray that even when you get back home, that you would find a husband. You can make commitments based upon all of the benefits. But there are times when you got to make commitments even based upon the detriments. There are times when your best decision is that you've made a commitment after you've carefully examined not only the benefits, but also the detriments. Everybody say detriments. Because detriments are not bad. Detriments inform. Okay? So commitments based upon decisions. But in verse, let's see, this is verse, I think it's verse 11. But Naomi said, she said, we're going with you. They're crying, we are going with you. We are not leaving you. I promise you, I'm not leaving you. You cannot go. But when those emotions wear off and now you're on the journey, now you're looking back saying, why did I not stay home? Right? Because that commitment was based on emotion. But now Naomi says to them, turn back, my daughters. And she asked a question. And anytime you make a true commitment, you must answer this question. She said this, why will you go with me? Why will you go with me? In order to truly be committed, you must answer the question, why? Why am I committed? What am I committed to? Why have I decided to commit? And this is what I call the cons and the deterrents to commitment. Verse 12, she says, turn back, my daughters, go, for I am too old to have a husband. And if I should say I have hope, if I should have a husband tonight, and should I bear a son, would you wait for that son so that he could grow up and marry you? Would you restrain yourself from having a husband? Would you restrain yourself? No, my daughters, it grieves me very much for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. See, the cons of this is that Naomi knew, and I think then the daughter-in-laws begin to think about, if they went with her, they were going to have to deal with some impossibilities. It would be impossible for them to get a husband. It would be impossible. She's telling you, this is what they call a levirate wedding, a marriage. When someone dies in the family, what has to happen is that the next of kin has to marry the widow so that they can protect the land and so that they can keep the widow. And she's saying, I don't have anybody. When I go back, I have nothing. Why are you going with me? Why would you even go? There is nothing good for you if you go with me. Why would you go? And see, we have to ask those questions. She is now not trying to convince them to go. She is trying in all of her heart to let them see that there's no reason for them to go. So they understood in this moment that if they went, they would have to deal with the impossibilities. The other thing that they would have to do, which was a con, is that they would then have to deal with, I'll say like this, being committed to her meant that she couldn't get them a husband. And so there's uncertainty. There's uncertainty. They're going to a place that they never know. They're not going to have a family. They're not going to have a heritage and a legacy. They're leaving their country to go with her. So there's uncertainty. See, commitment is not always based upon the known. Commitment sometimes is based upon the unknown. And these are cons for many of us. So there's the impossibilities, there's the uncertainty. And all of this must be answered with, why will you go with me? Commitment based on a decision makes you look at the pros and the cons. Commitments based upon a decision makes you look at both the pros and the cons. Commitment based upon decision says, I have considered. I have carefully considered. See, when you make a decision, when you make a commitment that's based on a true decision, a pledge to be devoted, to stay, and to remain, not just for this journey, but forever, you must consider what it is you're committing to. Then, as they continue, we see in verse 14, the apex of this story. We see in this one verse that their decisions have been made. What decisions has God placed in front of you today? What are those things that are out there in front of you that you've lingered long in a place of no decision, but you know God is saying, now I'm calling you to make a decision. Now I'm calling you to a place of commitment. Now is your time to commit. I believe this in my heart before we look at this. I believe in my heart that God is placing in our spirits the opportunity to display how committed we really are. What levels of commitment are we basing our decisions on? Are we basing our decisions on our emotions that are riddled with fear and doubt and worry? Are we basing our decisions simply on obligation? It's not that I want to, but I have to. They keep asking me, they keep expecting of me, and I now have to do it because I'm obligated. Or are we basing our commitments on our decision? Now, two decisions that really sum up commitment, at least in this context, as we learn from these beautiful ladies. The commitment I'm talking about here is either you are going to leave or you're going to cleave. You're going to leave or you're going to cleave. Before you get married, make up in your mind and decide in your heart right now, make the decision now. I'm either going to leave or I'm going to cleave. It doesn't take for you to get married. It doesn't take for the journey to happen and for you to get 5 years down the road into it. It means that before you even step one step into the journey, you can already make a commitment based upon the decision that you've established in your heart. Before you choose that job, make a decision. Am I going to leave or will I cleave? Before you pursue this next opportunity, make a decision. Am I going to be a leaver or am I going to be a cleaver? When you give your life to God and you commit yourself to walk in his community, ask yourself, am I a leaver or am I a cleaver? Because here's what we look at. It says, then they lifted up their voices and they wept again. They wept again. This is a different type of emotion. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. I asked you this to remember what I said about kiss, the word kiss. In Judaism, there are 3 forms of kissing. Number 1, there's a kiss of reverence. Number 2, there's a kiss of reunion and reconciliation. And then number 3, there's a kiss of farewell. There's a kiss of reverence, there's a kiss of reconciliation, and in this instance, there's a kiss of farewell. If we go back up, let's look very clearly. When Naomi told them, you need to go back, it says that what she did is she kissed them. She kissed them. So what Naomi was saying, in the moment of their emotions, she kissed them, and this is what sparked their emotions. She kissed them and she said, I'm leaving you. And they got so emotional that they said, you cannot leave us. Naomi was saying goodbye. She gave them a kiss of farewell. And what emoted all of these emotions was that she was leaving them. It says now they begin to cry again. They're on the journey. They're going to Bethlehem, Judah. They had said that we're going with you. And the more and more they continue to take the steps, now reasoning begins to step into the situation. And now they begin to think about their future. And now they begin to think about their family. And now they begin to think about the things that are uncertain. And a lot of us don't think about those uncertainties. And a lot of us don't think about those things until we're already in the journey. And so now they are in the journey. And now in both of their minds, they're thinking. As they take a step closer to Judah, they're thinking about Moab. As they try to step into this new place that God has for them, they keep being reminded of what they might miss in their Moab. And now, it says that they cried first and displayed their commitment second. Look at this. It says that they lifted up their voices and they wept again. And listen to what Orpah did. Orpah kissed her. Orpah kissed her. Orpah had made up in her mind, in that moment, I'm leaving. Orpah kissed her. Her kiss was farewell. Goodbye. Goodbye to what we had. Goodbye to those memories. Goodbye to even some of the dreams, because I'm leaving. Orpah kissed her. Orpah decided to leave. And then Ruth did something completely different. It says she clung to her. She clung to her. See, Orpah decided to leave, and Ruth decided to cleave. See, when there are decisions that we have to make, and there are commitments that we have to make, we must make sure that we understand that there are only 2 responses. I've been listening to these songs today and kind of been messing with me. And you know me, I like music. And I've been singing that one to you. Orpah said, let's just kiss and say goodbye. It's by the Manhattans. Let's just kiss and say goodbye, right? But you want to know what Ruth said? Ruth said, and I'm telling you, I'm not going. You're the best thing I've ever known. And there's no way I will ever go. No, 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 no way. No way I'm leaving without you. See, I don't know which one is your favorite song. Maybe you do. Maybe you like Jennifer Holliday. Maybe you like her. Maybe you got that Ruth in you. Or maybe you got that Orpah in you, like the Manhattans. Let's just kiss and say goodbye. We've been meeting here for so long. Please don't stop me until I'm through. There's just a few things I have to do. Let's just kiss and say goodbye. See, Orpah decided to kiss and say goodbye. But Naomi said, there's no way I'm leaving without you. I'm not leaving without you. And I believe commitment in this time in which God has called us to, and a place in which all of us have our moments in which it's easy to leave, God is looking to see, do you have a commitment inside of you that will make you cleave? See, what are you committed to that will cause you to cleave? And what are the things that make you leave? I look around in a lot of areas in life, and I notice that we live in a world now to where everything that we do, if we don't like it, we're leaving. And everything that we do, if somebody offends us, we're leaving. And everything that somebody does, we delete them as friends. We get them off our social media. And see, I want to know, are there any Ruths in this house today? See, I want to know, can we be like Ruth? Well, Pastor Darryl, what are you saying? What is Ruth like? I'm going to read you this and then we'll be done. See, because we are either leavers or we are cleavers. We will kiss and say goodbye, or we will cling and remain. Here's what happened. Throughout this entire text, we notice that Naomi had a one-track mind, was to encourage as best she could for these girls to leave her. Remember that. To leave her, to return, to go back. But just don't go with her. And I don't believe that it had anything to do with her lack of love. I think that she really felt like, in her eyes, she loved them so much that she wanted them to have what she thought would be better for them back in their Moab. People who love you, even if you think they love you, if they're sending you back to your Moab, even if it's unfamiliar, even if you're not certain, if you believe it's God, I want you to keep going towards your Judah. Keep taking those steps. Listen to what she says. Again, in verse 15, Naomi said, look. And now she's only speaking to one person. Again, she said, because the first time didn't work and the second time didn't work, and I tried to get rid of you the third time and you still won't leave. And she said, look, your sister-in-law, she's gone back to her people and to her gods. And she says one more time, return after your sister. And listen to what Naomi has to say. I call that what Ruth has to say. I call this the Ruth Anthem. She says, entreat me not to leave you. Don't ask me again to leave you or to turn back from following after you. I pray that this will be our prayer as it relates to God first. But I also believe that there's covenant that God has called us to walk in. For wherever you go, I'll go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God will be my God. Deep. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death part you and me. Here's the beautiful thing. When she saw that she was determined, when Naomi saw that she was determined not just to go, but to go with her, it says that Naomi stopped speaking to her. So you want to know what will shut up a lot of uncertainty and a lot of lack of commitment? Is someone who's truly committed. You know what is going to shut up the mouth of doubt that is trying to push you away from pursuing what God has for you? Is an unyielding and an unwavering display of commitment. You want to know what is going to get that very thing that you've always wanted? Is this commitment that is unshakable. And I've talked to you about this. I believe that God will bless and he will use those who are committed. I believe that. I believe that. I believe that in my heart. I have seen it too many times in my life. I've been in situations where I didn't agree and I didn't know, but I felt like God said, you be committed. Because commitment is not just based on a person, although God will show you that he will use a person to show if you're committed. Commitment is based upon purpose. And commitment, there will always be opportunity for you to find pros and cons in commitment. There will always be seasons where it's drought and famine in relationships. There will always be times where there's scarcity and an opportunity to flee. But I want to know, who are those people who say, I'm committed? See, I'm committed. There will always, somebody was talking to me the other day, and I love this. People be like, listen, Pastor Darryl, I want to be with you, and I want to do whatever. Just tell me where you're going. Where do you see yourself going in the next 5 years? And I'm going to do my best to help you understand where I'm going. But she didn't know where she was going, and she was still committed. She didn't need the plan, and she was still committed. She didn't need the outline, and she was still committed. She didn't need to know everything, and she was still committed. She was going to a foreign place, didn't speak their language, didn't know what they were doing, but she was still committed. See, commitment sometimes is not based upon you knowing the plan. Commitment is sometimes is you having in your heart that I've decided to be committed even if I don't know what's next for me. There's a level of commitment that God is calling his people to, and it must be to him first and then the purpose in which he's called us to. And when you start committing yourself to purpose, you will find yourself committed to people. When you start committing yourself to purpose, you will find yourself committed to people. And I know we live in a world right now to where a lot of people, it's not about that. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to do it how I want to. But I'm going to tell you this. I've seen this in my life for the years that I've been here on earth. When you start finding yourself committed to a purpose that's bigger than you, then you will start finding yourself committed to people who don't look like you, who don't talk like you, who don't walk like you, who disagree with you, who don't do what you do, will get you upset. And God has still called you to be committed because truthfully, the best commitment is a commitment that you've premeditated and made a decision before you ever started the journey. It's before you ever started the journey. And I believe that's what God is calling us to. As we look at this amazing woman, Ruth, I want us to see that as we take this journey with us. I want to see that as we walk with her and the steps that will get her to Judah. I want us to see that as we get into the place of her uncertainty. I want us to see that because be committed and God will do what he said he would do. Be faithful and God will do what he said he will do. Be the source of the one who will say, I'm with you and I'm not leaving, and God will do what he said he will do. I say this, I'm not asking you to commit to me. I'm asking you to commit to the purpose that God has called his people to. Commit to it. And his people, you'll see his people. True commitment can't be had without people you're called to walk with. You're either going to be an Orpah or you're going to be a Ruth. And there's nowhere in between. You're either an Orpah or you're a Ruth. And I'll know which one you are when I ask you, how close is your Naomi? Where's your Naomi? Who do you walk with? Where's your Naomi? Who do you cling to? Even when it feels like they're trying to push you away. You'll know if you're an Orpah. You'll know if you're a Ruth by the proximity of your Naomi. It's not about your Moab, and it's not about your Judah. Whichever way you go has more to do with your Naomi. Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for this opportunity to be in your word. And I'm asking, God, that you would help. You would help us. God, I pray that you would distill out of everything that was just said, anything that is just based upon humanality, anything that is based upon humanism, anything that is just based upon man's perspective. And I pray that you would allow us to be rooted in what you are showing us with one of the most amazing women in the Bible, a Moabite woman, not even called as a child of Israel, not a Hebrew, not an Israelite, but one who was committed. And I pray that we would see that it's not about man's commitment. It's about what you see in commitment. Let us be a people, your people, who are committed. Let us be committed. And let our commitments not be based upon obligation, not even emotion, but let our commitment be based upon decision. Cover us and keep us. In Jesus' name, amen. I feel compelled to pray for those who, I believe this, and it starts with commitment with God. And I believe that some of us, even when we're giving our lives to Christ, we gave our lives to Christ based upon obligation. I have to. Some of us gave our lives to Christ based upon emotions. I'm afraid. But I believe today, God wants to give you an opportunity to make a commitment to His Son, Jesus Christ, based upon decision. I can't promise you where He's going to take you. I can't promise you who the people are you're going to walk with. I can't promise you that this might not end up in a way that you didn't think. But what I can promise you is that you, being committed to Him, are in the best place that you'll ever be. And I want to make sure that this is done by decision. And if that's you, wherever you're at, I want you to go ahead and I want you to pray this prayer with me. And after we get done, I want you to click this button and say, raise your hand. Click that button, because a decision, there should be a display of your decision. I want you to click that button, fill out that information, and we'll make sure we follow up with you. This is your opportunity to commit because you decided to. You didn't commit because you had to. And then you didn't commit because you felt a certain way. But you commit today because you've considered it in your heart. If that's you, let's pray. Father, I thank you for this opportunity. And Lord, I pray that you would minister to your people. I believe that you're ministering to the hearts of certain people. Some of you all, you've been in church and you've lived and you're a Christian. But when you really just reduce this thing down to what it is, your commitment was not based upon a true, heartfelt decision that I won't leave. It may have been emotions. It may have been based upon what you need. But today, God says, I want you to be committed to me because you've considered the cost and you want to follow me with everything that you have. Repeat after me, dear God, I follow you today because I've decided to. I leave behind the old and I follow you to the unknown, the uncertain, and the unfamiliar, because I trust you and I believe in you and I want everything that you desire for me. Forgive me, restore me, and redeem me. In your Son Jesus' name, I pray. Amen. Well, I've already given you instructions on what you need to do. Make sure you just click that raise your hand button. I'm serious. Please don't just look at the screen and say, I heard that last week. I want to know, have you made that commitment? Have you made that commitment? Have you truly considered and have you made that commitment? This is not based upon your obligation. This is not based upon your family has grown up in church and you've grown up in church. This is not based upon you went because you felt bad or you got in a bad situation and you went to church. This is based upon a clear and conscious premeditated decision that I today choose with all of my heart to follow Jesus. And if you've never made that type of commitment, let me encourage you. Now is the best opportunity to do so. So click that button so we can pray with you. If you have any prayer needs as well, our prayer team is available for you. You should see a prayer request button. Click that, and if you have any prayer requests for any need, our team would love to pray with you. We have a private chat area that you can go with them and just share with them your prayer needs and your prayer requests. Then next is our offering. I believe that in all that we do, the very root of what we do as it relates to our relationship with Christ comes down to commitment. And this is a place right here when we talk about our offering and we talk about giving to God. Either you're going to leave or you will cleave. There's no other way around it. There's no explanation. But God gives us these opportunities so that we can show, will we cleave or will we leave? An offering is our way to show God that we're in this with him and that we're going to be in this with him. And we are going to honor him for all that he's blessed us with. So if you're going to join us today, let me just encourage you to, you can give by multiple ways. You can go online. There should be a link that's in the chat area, but many of us give by way of our Push Pay app. And so you can text VGC to the number 77977, and you'll get a link, and all of what you need is available to you so that you can do just that. Well, as we prepare to go, I'm just excited. I'm really excited. I believe that God is going to do something really, really special in this series. And I want us to take a moment to even evaluate our level of commitment. Our level of commitment. And so we're going to have some moments in which we do that. What is our level of commitment? What are we committed to? Who are we committed to? And why are we committed? And we're also going to have some Bible studies that we'll pull up as well. And my wife, Joan, and I are going to do that, and I'm looking forward. But here are a few announcements. Our missions info meeting, we're going to Puerto Penasco, Mexico, and you just saw the video. But let me encourage you, missions is something that will change you. A lot of times when people go on mission trips, they actually think that they're going to help someone and to help those who are in need, not recognizing that the one who has greatest need is them. Missions will also expose you. A lot of us, we don't understand how much the power of darkness is at work in foreign lands. Not in foreign people, but in foreign lands. When we step into places, we must have our hearts ready and prepared to serve God, but also be secure in God. And if we are not prepared, it's in those moments where the weaknesses that we have, the cracks in our life, become big, literally caverns that are just separate us, and valleys that it seems like, how did I get myself into it? And I believe that God is going to use this opportunity for us to encourage you, to prepare you, and to strengthen you so that you can be ready to go on the mission field and do amazing work for him. And so if you're considering going to Puerto Penasco, I would encourage you, first and foremost, even before you make that final decision, go to this missions info meeting so that you can receive that information. There's a link where you can sign up. It's going to be on Zoom, and we would love to see you. And then starting on the 25th, we're actually introducing this. I'm really excited for this. We're going to have a men's book club. And so we have two men in our church, Ray Brown and Seven Cervantes, and they're going to be doing a book club. And so it's going to be reading and men getting together. And I would love for as many of our men to participate in this. There's more information, but I believe it's going to be each Monday night from 7 to 8:30. They'll have light snacks. They're going to read 2 chapters a week, and they're going to discuss it. And so this will be only for about 5 or 6 weeks. But I believe this is another one of these opportunities where we can continue to draw closer together. And men, more than anything, all of us in the season of pandemic, we all recognize that we've been pushed a little bit further. So let's now begin to start drawing back closer. And I want to encourage you, please show up, sign up. There should be a sign up link as well. And I would love to see you there. These guys are really going to do an awesome job, and I'm encouraged to see what God does through them. Before we go, today at 2 p.m., we are having our VGC Kids. And so if you're pre-K or elementary, go ahead. If you have a child who's pre-K or elementary, go ahead, click the link or go to our app, sign them up so that we can spend time with them. One of our greatest joys, or at least in my life, and I'm recognizing it, is to be able to walk with these kids and to not only teach them, but to learn from them. And I would encourage each and every one of you, if you really want to serve, let's serve our children. Please, let's serve our children. So God bless you. I pray that this is a blessing to you. Let's be a people committed. Let's learn from Ruth. Let's understand that we have been called as God's people to do amazing things. Amazing things don't just happen because we want to. Amazing things happen because we decide to. And let's be a committed people. VGC, we still may be socially distant, but it does not mean that we are not drawn spiritually close. We are together wherever we are. It's on.